I have the Fischer Travers Carbon backcountry touring ski boots. And this has been a staple in the mediocre quiver of backcountry skiing equipment over the last probably, I think, 2 years we've used this. This is a boot that is very lightweight, it walks incredibly well, and it skis far superior than you would ever think from a boot that is this light and that climbs as well as this boot does, and I'll explain why. So it's called the Fischer Travers Carbon, but fun fact, this version, which is actually the previous version, we'll talk about the new version in a minute, does not have any carbon in the shell. The only carbon is in the sole of this boot, and that's actually the secret sauce of why this boot skis so well. What it does is it stiffens up the boot torsionally so it cannot twist this way, and so it's able to drive skis almost like a traditional alpine boot would, where you're trying to really lay that ski on edge and keep it from twisting. People think that the stiffness is most important front to back. Actually, almost as much important is the torsional stiffness for a boot to be able to ski strong. So this is a strong skiing boot, far stronger than I ever thought. I had a Scarpa Maestrale RS that I thought was a light boot a couple of years ago, and the good folks at Skimo Co. in Salt Lake City convinced me to take the plunge and experiment with something lighter that would ultimately change my life. So I love the simplicity of this boot. Boa closure for the lower. I have a wider foot with a high instep, like high volume, and this is adapted very well. It is a roomy fit in this boot, but Danny also got turned on to this boot a few years ago, and he skied it extensively, and his foot is definitely narrower than mine, and he's had no problems with the fit as well. This BOA system, we're big fans of BOA. All things BOA across different disciplines seems to adapt really well to different foot shapes. And then on the top you just have one cuff that is kind of a set and forget idea that, you know, tighten down for the downhill. You get to the bottom, you just pop, and one simple release in the back, and then you are in your walk mode. They claim 80 degrees of rotation in walk mode, which people also ask sometimes, why do you need so much? The ankle can only articulate something like 40 or 50 or maybe 60 degrees. But I will tell you that boots that have unlimited range like this really shine when you start climbing, because you never get to a point of resistance, meaning that there's never any kind of resistance once you get to the ranges or the limits of that travel. So both of us, both Danny and I, when we first put on this boot and started climbing, we noted that it just felt like running shoes, that there was just no resistance at all. It could walk and climb exceptionally well. This is an aftermarket liner that I put in. After about 2 seasons, I wore out my other liner. I went with a little bit beefier liner, so I've kind of turned this boot into something a little bit more than it originally was, but that's because I picked up an even lighter boot this year. So this boot has been used from everything from just daily ski tours here in the Wasatch, but we've also used this boot, I think, on every single volcano that we've climbed and skied this year. I used this on Adams, Mount Hood. Mount Hood, used it with crampons, worked exceptionally well. Jefferson, St. Helens, Shasta, those were all done with this boot, and I wouldn't have picked a different boot to do it, for the reason that it is light, climbs well, skis exceptionally well. So the only difference with the new version, they made a new version called a carbon cuff, and the cuff is made out of carbon. So it's the exact same boot, but with a carbon cuff. I can tell you from experience, I've tried it on, used it, that the carbon cuff is barely stiffer and barely lighter than this boot. I don't even know if you would notice while on the mountain, if you're skiing it, I don't know if you'd notice that stiffness or that weight at all. And these boots, the previous version, can be had at a great deal all across the internets here in the US. So if you stumble upon a pair and you're in the market for a light ski touring boot, these come highly recommended. I'll give it a 5 out of 5 star rating of superior. The Fischer Travers Carbon ski boot.